So we start today really hunkering down and getting ready and looking forward to the coming of Easter. But I want to ask you a question as we head into the Easter season. Are you aware that there's a war going on? We've been with the United States troops in Afghanistan now for 15 years. It's the longest time American troops have been deployed in an active combat zone. But that's not really what I'm talking about. It's something much bigger. I don't mean the war on terror. I'm talking about something much bigger, much older than anyone in this room this morning, even Jack. So, if you realize that there is, and I'm going to use the most overused word in America right now, there is an epic battle taking place. It's been going on for so long, kind of like a never-ending struggle. And in this war that I'm talking about, we all have the potential to be casualties in this war, especially if we don't understand it. Jesus offers this insight about his enemy and our enemy, the devil. In John 10:10, Jesus describes him as a thief who comes to steal and kill and destroy. And that has been his method of operation since the beginning of mankind. This rebel angel, Lucifer, had the gall to show up at the beginning of God's perfect creation and target Adam and Eve. The only thing in all of God's creation that bore the image of God. Man and woman were created in the image of God. And that is where the enemy launched his first attack, tempting them not to follow God. So the enemy had some success. But the good news, unlike any other war, I can tell you how this war is going to end. Our enemy has already been defeated. That's the conclusion of the sermon. But we're not ready to leave that. I got to explain this to you. But take heart. The enemy has already been defeated. Problem is, he's still trying to wreak havoc, and he will not concede to the fact that he has been defeated. So, we've got some things to be aware of. Let me show you down through history here. There was a British pastor and a great author named John Stott, and he offers us a quick review of various attacks that the enemy made towards Jesus. After Jesus was born, if you remember back to the Christmas story, Satan took advantage of King Herod's insane jealousy and had all the baby boys in his kingdom murdered. Okay, that was a demonically satanic attack on children to try to destroy Jesus. So you can see as this happens, when Jesus came into the world, at this point, Satan realizes, God is breaking out the nuclear option on me. This is going to be a major problem. Jesus grows up. He is ready to start his active ministry. So, when he is at his weakest points, After 40 days of fasting and praying in the wilderness, Satan, being the cheap shot that he is, shows up and tries to attack Jesus with a direct temptation. Stupid Lucifer, that's not going to work. When the disciple Peter said to Jesus, "You must not go to the cross, you can't do that," what did Jesus say? "Get behind me, Satan." And when the establishment finally got together with the Jewish leaders and the Roman leaders, and they had enough of what Jesus was doing, the enemy utilized the weakness in Judas and tempted him to betray Jesus. So there have been some big battles and some little skirmishes, and they occasionally still happen now. How is this going to play out? That leads us right into today's scripture from Colossians 2, starting at verse 8. It says, "See to it that no one takes you captive by philosophy and empty deceit, according to human tradition, according to the elemental spirits of this world, and not according to Christ. For in him the whole fullness of deity dwells bodily. And you have been filled in him, who is the head of all rule and authority. In him also you were circumcised with a circumcision made without hands, by putting off the body of the flesh by the circumcision of Christ, having been buried with him in baptism, in which you were also raised with him through faith in the powerful working of God, who raised him from the dead. And you, who were dead in your trespasses and the uncircumcision of your flesh, God made alive together with him, having forgiven us all our trespasses, by canceling the record of debt that stood against us with its legal demands. This he set aside, nailed to the cross. He disarmed the rulers and authorities and put them to open shame by triumphing over them in him." So I want to go back now and look at some of the key elements in that passage from Colossians. Human tradition. There are many places where we can point to this. But right now in our area in Pennsylvania, we are seeing the disastrous consequences of human tradition in the Catholic Church with this institutional abuse and cover-up that goes as high as bishops. They've always kind of had a rather cumbersome and powerful bureaucracy. And whenever you have that much power and that much authority, it can lead to corruption. That's why we had a Reformation 500 years ago. There were a lot of problems then, and it led to people breaking away and starting new churches, because in this human tradition and in this power chain of command, when you get leaders that are going off the path and ordering things to be done their way, you are opening a door for the enemy to walk right into, yes, a church and bring that demonic spirit to steal, to kill, and destroy. The highest authority in the Church of Jesus Christ is this book right here. No one man or no small group of men with their own traditions that aren't in this book. When we have that kind of authority, we can have some really major problems. When human authority goes wrong, we have problems. I might be the shepherd of this flock, but if for some strange reason you start to be concerned and you think my potatoes have been baking a little bit too long, I am not unapproachable. I am not shielded from your feedback or your concerns. If I decide that I'm really ticked at somebody and I just decide one night I'm going to walk up and say Book and I have had it with each other and I just bop him one right across the face, I assure you the deacons are not going to show up at your house with hush money. Okay? And our bishop, our district executive, is not going to allow me to cover that up. You know, I'm accountable for the decisions I make, good and bad. And I am not here this morning saying this to pick on Catholic people. Actually, my heart breaks for the people in the Catholic Church. I get very annoyed, I get very disturbed, I get very frustrated with the arguments in our denomination over theology and how certain things are to be handled, but I can't even wrap my head around if how bad it would feel if there was a scandal of children being abused and leadership covering that up. I'm not picking on these people. We need to pray for these people. And that they can get through this somehow and they can maintain their faith. Back to this scripture now about Jesus. This gives us a very clear picture of exactly who Jesus was. The scripture says, in him the whole fullness of deity dwells bodily. There are a lot of people out there in the world today that will give you alternative explanations about what Jesus was, or who he was, or just ignore that and stick with what it says in the book, okay? The book says, the whole fullness of deity dwells bodily in Jesus. That scripture tells us who he was on earth. God in a human body. And again, this is where the enemy starts to realize, oh man, this is a big problem. Because Jesus is one of a kind. God in a human body. That is indestructible. That is unique. No one previously or ever after was like Jesus in that manner. We had some baptisms. Actually, we just had one baptism last week. It's kind of nice that we had a baptism to lead us up into this scripture because it talks about that in there too, along with salvation. The word tells us here that we were dead to our sin. That when we were baptized and got in that water to show the world our faith, when we come out of that water, we show we are no longer spiritually dead, but we are spiritually alive. We have come out of a burial in water to live as disciples of Jesus. We come into a new life. And as we focus in the coming weeks understand what happened at the crucifixion, at the cross. Going back to a couple of more passages from today's scripture. Verse 14 says what Jesus did on the cross. By canceling the record of debt that stood against us with its legal demands, this he set aside, nailing it to the cross. That is our forgiveness. That is our salvation. That is my sin. That is your sin. Erased completely. Clean slate with God because of what happened on the cross. And that complete cleansing and forgiveness is available to anyone who will accept it. 100% ready to go. You just need to accept the offer. In trying to destroy Jesus by getting Judas to betray him, the enemy's big attack blew up in his face and completely backfired. When Jesus said the final words on the cross, "It is finished," the work of Satan was also defeated. The death and resurrection of Jesus, that is the most important event in all of human history. The enemy was put to shame. Scripture tells us he was disarmed, shamed, and triumphed over. Our enemy was defeated. Are you with me? On that cross, our enemy was defeated once and for all. Is that good news? See, the current situation that we live in now is a little bit like Germany after World War II. Hitler, dead. But yet there were still a few loyalists out there that were called werewolves that were still loyal to Hitler, even though he was dead. Well, we have forces of evil that are still in the world. And just like America continued to maintain a military presence in Germany to take care of the werewolves, we need to maintain a high-profile spiritual presence in our world so that we can protect one another and others from any potential attacks from what's left of Satan's failed attempt to rebel against God. He failed. We walk in victory because of his failure. But we must be vigilant. If we cave to the temptations of this world and to the logic of man and to the traditions of man, there is still the possibility that we could walk into a world of hurt. But it need not happen. And the church's job at this point is kind of like a mop-up job at the end of an epic battle. We just need to take care of one another, help keep each other faithful and on track, and to continue to reach out and touch others so that they do not become casualties of the enemy as well. We live victorious lives because of the sacrifice of Jesus. You want to talk about turn around, backfire, and here's another hot word from our vocabulary these days, repurposing. You know, when you take something that you used for something and you turn it around and used it for something else. The cross was a symbol from the Roman army of death and fear. People would see a cross and they did not have good feelings about it. But Jesus took the symbol of death and oppression and he turned it into a symbol of victory over death and the grave. And that, my friends, is what we celebrate at Easter. Victory of Jesus that gives us victory.